The Department of Health and Human Services says it will reform the organ transplant system after a troubling find. A recent investigation by the department found that the organ procurement process sometimes began while patients still showed signs of life. The department calls it a, quote, disregard for the sanctity of life. The department examined 351 cases where organ donation was authorized but not completed. It found nearly 30% showed some concerning features. At least 28 patients may not have been deceased at the time the procurement process was initiated. As to the reasons this might have occurred, evidence pointed to poor neurological assessments, questionable consent practices, and other problems. To talk about this more, we'd like to bring in now Dr. Joseph Meany, president of the National Catholic Bioethics Center. Dr. Meany, thanks for being back with us. First off, were you surprised by these findings, particularly that the procurement process began while donors were still showing signs of life?
It's extremely concerning, and I would have to say that there have been concerns for quite a few years now that the process does have some significant flaws in terms of how it's actually implemented.
So would you say this has been a persistent issue within the organ donation culture?
I would say that there's a lot of pressure to obtain as many organs as possible, and therefore there's a tendency to cut corners. There's also a tendency from the organizations that do the organ donations to have a kind of pressure to say, wow, in doubt, we're going to not go with the safe choice, but rather the organ choice. And so there's a real, I think there's a real brokenness in the system right now that has been discovered.
Well, can you clarify for us, what does the Catholic Church teach when it comes to organ donation?
Yeah, so any vital organs have to be taken from a dead donor, and the declaration of death has to be done in a very credible way so that there is moral certitude that the person has died. And so there are a lot of questions that come into play with some of the exams that are done to declare individuals to be dead. So the Uniform Determination of Death Act says that there has to be zero functioning in the brain to be able to declare a person brain dead. And there's some question marks, as to how those clinical criteria are applied properly to determine if a person is truly brain dead. And then on top of that, there's now a lot of donations that are done through cardiac determination. And so what that does is they wait for a person's heart to stop beating, and then they wait a certain period of time, but sometimes it's an extremely short period, 1, 2, 3, 4 minutes. And then they declare the person dead, and then they take out their organs. If that is not done extremely well, then there's a real possibility the person is still alive that is being declared dead. And so then the extraction of the organs, the heart, etc., is actually the cause of death.
I have less than a minute with you, but HHS says they will reform the organ program. What changes do you want to see?
I think there's a need for a great deal of respect for the donors and the donors' families. There's a need for moral certitude. So what needs to happen is to have a really strong determination of death before any kind of vital organ donation process is initiated.
Dr. Joseph Meany, president of the National Catholic Bioethics Center. Thank you.
Thank you.